we pulled together with the UN Commission on Indigenous People and Climate, Margaret, myself, some others were here, were involved. And the idea was not to simply say, how are Indigenous people impacted? But more importantly to say, what are their contributions to helping us understand what we ought to do? This is, of course, a different question. As I like to tell Dan, my friend Will here in a minute, I always say, you know, they want the land and the water, well, now they want the information too. So this is a very, very critical lesson to learn. Whenever I start a presentation talking to people from small communities, I always welcome them. And then I said, it's always odd for me to welcome you to your own land. This is a very interesting thing. The place you've been are where the rhythms of the season exist. I'm not making this up. This is what we think about in climate change. This is what we're trying to get embedded into the development agencies like the Inter-American Development Bank, the World Bank. The people with some money who can spend it on every changing climate. We monitor, we evaluate, we learn, and we innovate. This is how we made it through most things. Monitor, evaluate, learn, and innovate. But what we monitor, how we learn it, is now spread out much more from just satellites and rain gauges. It's the stories of what the people carry with them. It's part of our monitoring and learning. That's the only way we produce innovation, varieties of corn over time, which are true innovation. So what is needed? All that is needed. A simple thing. Are more people like the Carletta Chiefs, the Margaritas are downstairs, right? People like certainly Casey, Jolene, that actually act as this interface and can bring respect to the science tribal interface. That does not simply walk in and say, we know what's good for you and you should do X or Y. We've never done it. I sit on many National Academy committees. That's what we do for a living. Here's what you ought to do. I've never done it.
Here is 4 quick points. Point number 1. And I know I hear this all the time, and I'm just going to give you one person's view of it. I always like to tell the story about knowledge. Some of you have probably heard it before, but the way I heard it was from Nisga'a people in British Columbia when they were going through their land settlements claims acts, and they had a tribal council meeting, and they had hired a very highfalutin and very expensive attorney from Eastern Canada, probably Quebec or Montreal. And they were getting ready to go to the provincial courts for their land settlement claims hearing. This is important. To settle, finally, once and for all, legally, the true boundaries of their homelands that had been neglected and unrecognized by provincial Canadian governments. And the story goes like this. They're in the tribal council meeting, and the council chairperson says, well, and I'd like to introduce our attorney. He's organized our whole, line of argument for this hearing. And they introduced Jean-Jacques Pierre Leroux, someone in Eastern Canada. And he says, well, I want you to know I've secured an expert witness on our behalf. And everyone's going, well, who is the expert witness on us, on our people? And again, he gave another name, and they all looked around the table, and they said, well, gee, we don't know this individual. And they said, who is he? Oh, he says, I assure you, he's an expert on your people. He's written a half a dozen journal articles, and he's written 2 books. And in fact, I'm told during his thesis research, he spent 6 months on your homelands. He's your expert. The people around the table just looked at each other and said, no, he's not our expert. And he said, I'm guaranteeing you, this guy's an expert witness. He knows what's going on here. Well, to tell the short version of the story, they say, the attorney says, okay, well, what are you going to do? And he said, the tribal council said, well, we have our own expert. We have a person who's lived on our lands his entire life. He's hunted from the headwaters of those coastal rivers coming out of the Canadian Rockies to the coastal estuaries. He's fished. He was raised by his grandparents back. He hadn't spent much time off our lands, not the reservation, not the legal boundaries of the reservation, but our traditional homeland areas. He's our witness. And they said, well, I'm your attorney, and I'm saying, I don't think this is a good way to go. They said, well, he's our expert, and we're going to have him testify. So the story goes like this. They go to the day of the hearing, and this little old man's name is called, and he gets up at the back of the room. The judge sees this little old man getting up, coming out as an expert. This judge says, babe, hold on a second, I want the witness to approach the bench. So, you know, the elder comes up there, and he says, sir, do you know why you're here? He says, yes. He says, do you need a translator? We have translators, and we'll be glad to offer a translator if you need a translator. He says, no, I speak English. And he says, and you understand what this proceeding is about? He said, yeah. He says, okay, we have a swear what he said. And you solemnly swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. And I looked there for a second, looked at the bailiff and said, no. The judge is shocked. The bailiff is shocked. The judge goes, wait a second now. Sir, you said you didn't need a translator. You said you understood the question that was being asked. So he said, okay, what went wrong? Something went wrong. Let's do this again. And so again, we went through it. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. This time the elder thought about it again. This time he looked right at the judge and he said, no. And the judge is exasperated now. Holds up his hand and said, sir, all we're asking you to do is tell the truth. And he said, no, that's not what you asked me to swear to. You asked me if I can tell you the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And sir, all I can tell you is what I know. What a beautiful story. And I would tell you that is probably as relevant as any principle, axiom, or formula. All of you future scientists and engineering students could put to memory. Why? Because the problems that we face today, whether it's salination of water, whether it's rising sea level, whether it's lack of sea water, whether it's, degradation of water quality, degradation of air quality, these problems don't fit in neat little boxes. They don't fit in neat little disciplines. The challenge you're going to have is you're going to have to learn how to be incredible communicators. And I believe some of you are better suited for that than a lot of other people on the planet. Because if you can draw on your indigenous, your tribal, your native heritage and traditions, you will know that we have built-in protection in our own institutions, our tribal institutions, from those people who claim to know it all.